Nick?
Oh, hello, sister. How are you doing?
Good. What are you up to?
I'm reading.
Oh, is it a good book?
It's a book. Things happen.
Why are you wearing corpse paint?
Corpse paint? No. This is exfoliating face mask. It really draws out the crud in my pores, you know?
Uh-huh. Well, I wanted to let you in on a thought I had. It's about a ghost video. I think you should make one about their first 3 albums.
About them, but... but they're not narratively inclined like their last 2. That was sort of the angle I went for.
Well, your other ghost videos did well. I'm sure you'll think of a way. Oh, and take off that ridiculous face paint. You look like a rejected Joker concept art.
So much for clean, healthy skin. Anyway, Ghost! We are so back! What's to be said about Ghost that hasn't been said already? At this point in time, they're at their most dizzying heights, hot off the heels of their feature film and with rumblings of album number 6 on the horizon. With that in mind, I think it's pertinent to round out my series on Ghost's narratives and address their first 3 albums, Opus Eponymous, Infestissumam, and Meliora. As I said in the cold open, Prequel and Impera stand out in that they're more narratively structured than the prior albums. With Prequel, each song was a point in a linear journey. With Impera, each song was a point in a cyclical metaphor. With the first 3, however, things are not so straightforward. Rather than a story, each album, in my view, represents a theme, each song a different concept surrounding that theme. I don't intend to simply analyze each individual track. Instead, we're going to look at what these 3 albums are trying to tell us as a whole. Because while they each tout their own unique theme, strung together as a package deal, you might just find there's a very solid story to be garnered. And of course, in keeping with the trend, I find myself woefully underdressed. Excuse me. Yeah, no more Spirit Halloween shit. This time it's real. This mask does not breathe at all, though. No wonder I have bad skin. Before we dive into Opus Eponymous, let me set the stage. It might sound hypocritical coming from me, who only got into this band about 2 years ago, but early Ghost was truly something else. This was an era of Ghost that, contrary to today, actively shunned social media. So for their first formal interview, they blindfolded a journalist and drove him to a warehouse in the woods, where the clergy was sitting at a table proclaiming their intent for world domination. This was an era where Ghost could comfortably be called underground doom metal, when shows felt like profane cult rituals, when they came out not just to sing, but to scare. Sure, they still acted goofy on stage, and those really absorbed in the metal scene still wrote off their gimmick as cheesy, but their music and aesthetic carried them along, sealing the foundation for those aforementioned dizzying heights. And all this was represented in their first studio album, Opus Eponymous. Compared to the professional, glossy production of their recent albums, Opus sounds raw, stripped down, and blithely satanic. The kind of music you'd hear on a crusty old cassette in a box in some occultist basement. Yet you won't find harsh vocals or distorted guitars or face-melting heaviness on Opus. Papa Emeritus I may resemble a black metal vocalist, but his singing sounds more in line with Blue Oyster Cult or Kansas. It's a bizarre yet endearing musical combination that's been echoed in Ghost's later sound, but not quite replicated. We start off with Deus Culpa, which translates to God's Fault, an instrumental piece on organ that's worthy of mentioning because when played backwards, it's actually a Swedish Christmas carol entitled Bethlehem Star. I find this amusing because of the old rumors of rock music played backwards revealing satanic messages. Deus Culpa is a cheeky version of that narrative, a satanic song revealing a Christian hymn. We then move on to Conclavi con Dio, translating to With Nails with God, a blatant declaration of the narrator's intent. The narrator is satanic clergy, the intent crucifying the image of God in preparation for their ministry. The song is a preparatory hymn, proclaiming their readiness to welcome the Antichrist from precipice, or hell, via his birth. This segues into Ritual, a more pop-infused decree of the same message. For generations, Bedouins and nomads have been carrying the word of Satan throughout catastrophes and hostile regimes, all for this one purpose: reciting from the ancient text, then procreating the devil's son upon a ritualistic bed in a sacred chapel. The clergy is outspoken in their hatred of God, inverting the Our Father to curse God and his followers for the crime of banishing Lucifer from heaven. The next song seems to take a drastic left turn subject-wise. Elizabeth lauds the Hungarian Countess Elizabeth Bathory, who allegedly, and I have to say that so I don't get sued by her legal team, slaughtered scores of virgin girls and bathed in their blood to retain her youth. Although these accounts are widely disputed and certainly exaggerated, Elizabeth Bathory has cemented herself as a pop culture icon in modern times, reimagined as a vampire or a satanic witch, and even holding a Guinness World Record for most prolific female serial killer.
You go, girl?
And this impression is one supported by the clergy as gospel, no pun intended. To them, Elizabeth is a saint-like figure, a satanic apostle still wandering the halls of her castle, young and beautiful even after all these centuries. But beneath this unholy veneration lies Opus's greater theme, one more mysterious and terrifying than anything we've discussed so far. Women. As much as Elizabeth seems like a narrative left turn, it transitions perfectly into the next song, Stand By Him. It tells the story of a woman possessed with demonic lust, seducing and ultimately sleeping with a vicar, or rather a man of the church, who apparently realized that fornicating with a supposed temptress was a bad thing, and how his damaged pride and compromised morality led to him declaring her a witch, thus leading to her execution. The story invokes historical witch trials, where women were accused of witchcraft and burned at the stake by holy men and fanatical townspeople. Far from the actual presence of witches, this mass hysteria was motivated in large part by abstinent men giving into their own carnal temptations against the will of God, and blaming their weakness on black magic casted by women. The song's bridge is a direct quote from the Malleus Maleficarum, a paper on the identification and execution of witches penned in 1486, referencing a passage which brands women as evil, lecherous, vain, and lustful.
You know what? I'm sure you could throw a few more adjectives in there. I'm not sure we got the point. How about bad? Yeah, now it hits.
Stand By Him is an ode to these women unfairly accused and slain by so-called men of God. Satanic or not, the clergy makes them into martyrs, proclaiming that vengeance will be theirs if they stand by the one true master of the world, Satan. Not much to be said about Satan prayer, other than it's a poetic inversion of the Nicene Creed, referencing Satan, the Antichrist, and the unholy ghost in place of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. It really is just that. A Satan prayer.
But goddamn, listen to that solo.
Oh, fuck.
Death Knell slows things down a little, its hammered tritones and crunchy bass telling the story of the Antichrist's ritualistic conception, right down to the word sex just said out loud 3 times. Still, it implores the mother to receive the beast of hell to the sound of the titular death knell, usually chimes rung in the wake of death, but here, inverted to both signal conception and herald mankind's oncoming doom. After the conception, we get a song lauding the expectant mother of the Antichrist, the prime mover, a secretive nun, casting a shadow over the ministry of God. The title is a play on the prime mover theory, referring to a singular act that kickstarted the universe, whether it be God or the Big Bang, but in this case, it's the maternal slave, the woman who shall birth the Antichrist, thus bringing about his unholy ministry. Finally, the birth is told through the instrumental piece, Genesis, its chugging percussion and gnarly synth lines invoking the motions of labor, cries of agony, crushing contractions, shifting pressures. And finally, a victorious ballad on acoustic guitars celebrating the newborn child's arrival. If you were to just show me an image of Ghost, Infestissumam is the type of music I'd first expect. Bombastic, liturgical, gothic, classically inspired. I can't thank this album enough for serving as my transition from classical to rock and metal. Year Zero was the first Ghost song I listened to in full, and I was blown away. Coming from someone who only ever really listened to Hans Zimmer, you can easily tell how the handshake was made. Infestissumam is my favorite Ghost album, even if it isn't the best. And this churchy sound was personified in their new vocalist, Papa Emeritus II, my favorite Ghost frontman design. This character embodied class and stature, and the decision to not leave a single bit of human skin exposed made him look more like a demon than a person. Although I can vibe with Ghost's current brighter, more accessible artistic direction, I do hope I can see a darker, more menacing frontman in one of their future cycles. But back to Infestissumam. We start out with Infestissumam, a stomping Gregorian chant whose Latin lyrics translate to a call for the Antichrist to destroy all things heavenly. The album art is both striking and amusing, as a thumb-sucking infant Colossus is literally dragged into St. Peter's Square. This bishop character cowers in the foreground, hands pressed to his ears against the music.
God, these millennials and their screamo thrash music.
Reminds me of that scene from Gravity Falls.
Lyrics, they were so hateful. It was so shocking, we were stricken down with double heart attacks.
Per Aspera ad Inferi hosts the same narrative value as Satan Prayer, in which it's literally just that, a Satan prayer, a welcoming anthem for the Antichrist. The clergy praises Satan and calls upon him to devour the world, promising the populace that submission to him would make all their dreams come true. The title is a spin on the phrase per aspera ad astra, which translates to through hardships to heaven. In this case, you can probably guess what inferi translates to. This is the clergy's expressed intent to lead humans through their lives on Earth, under new management, down to Satan's kingdom, where they ultimately promise a better life. Or afterlife. Secular Haze is a wild song, definitely the most underrated on the album, probably one of the band's most underrated in general. With its 3/4 time signature, carnival-like keys, and trilling guitars, it deliberately invokes drowning in icy seas, the creeping cold seizing up your lungs and locking your flesh, until a final flash of orgasmic warmth before death. Yet satanic imagery is littered throughout the lyrics. The divine bringer of light, the omnipotent son of the devil, bringing about an incurable fog among the masses. This is the Antichrist's influence spreading throughout the world and intoxicating his subjects, forcing the uninitiated to suffer, capitulate, and then finally, accept Satan. And just as giving in to drowning provides an orgasmic warmth, accepting Satan endows warmth and clarity after the cold, opaque, mist eternal. This is apparent in the album art, depicting a woman entangled in Satan's erotic grasp, no doubt on the verge of, that final stage of drowning. Which leads into Ghost's most sexually explicit song, Gigolo Harmageddo, its groovy stoner chords introducing the Antichrist as the Gigolo, or male prostitute, of Telmageddo, the biblical site of the apocalyptic final battle between angels and demons, where we get the term Armageddon.
So basically it's about a guy who gives such amazing sex, he'll rock your world.
This is such a filthy song, it's almost comical. The euphemisms strike the perfect balance between poetic and juvenile. Plowing fields, craving a wand, a Niveus potion. Yet it's a perfect ballad to describe the conquering machismo espoused by the Antichrist, now old enough into his tenure to deliver such a treatment. Still though, in keeping with the theme of acceptance, giving into his desire is the way to see what lies beyond.
So by now, Satan's ministry is in full swing. He's already invaded the Vatican and plowed your women. What sort of dirty sacrilegious creed is up next? Huh.
So right after all that sexually charged conquest and imposition, we get a weird song split between longing and slow, and weird, kinda sorta surfer rock.
Admittedly, I'm not a huge fan of this song. I actually prefer the first half, but regardless.
Ghoulie/zombie queen, the former word just meaning female ghoul, is, according to A Nameless Ghoul, a song about nostalgia, about looking back at something with rose-tinted glasses, thinking it was something much better than it really is. This is referenced in the lyrics describing the titular zombie queen as a regal figure, now putrefying and showing the bones underneath. The narrator expresses hope that she'll soon shapeshift under the pale moonlight, but for now, she's a rigid corpse, still as a statue. In terms of this album's greater themes, however, my interpretation is that this zombie queen was once a pagan goddess, buried when mainline Christianity took over her region of worship. Maybe her formal name, Heresis Dia, or Heretic Goddess, was imposed by the Church, then adopted by her adherents in defiance of it. It's befitting of the prior album's themes of femininity and how Satanism professes to bolster women, once oppressed by the Church, now worshipped for their past martyrdom and their power as prime movers. Perhaps the song aims to resurrect this ancient goddess, bring her back to her former glory, now welcome in the Antichrist's new regime. But maybe it's too late. Maybe she's not as they remembered her.
And maybe, now I can appreciate this song a little more. Jesus!
After being bombarded with the names of apocalyptic beasts and the names of Satan, we thrust headfirst into Year Zero, the most bombastic Satan prayer Ghost has written, prophesizing the trembling of nations, the downfall of world leaders, and Satan usurping God in heaven. It's a deliberate transitory hymn to the new reality of Satan's ministry. All we ever knew is now reset, even things as fundamental as the time and date. This is a new world, and its 0th year. So with the new regime in motion, the ministry leads the congregants into a ritualistic desecration of the God they knew, a twisted inversion on the Holy Eucharist, consuming the flesh and blood of a messianic cadaver, thus digesting the image of God, and then shitting him out, condemning him to an existence of common, vulgar swill. It always strikes me how processional this song is. One can easily imagine a congregation walking up and partaking in communion to this driving, marching tune. And where is all that refuse going to go? Down the shitter with the rest of the old ways. Next on the list is idolatrine, fittingly a portmanteau of the words idol and latrine, referring to a supposed holy figure who preaches a bunch of crap to his followers. The narrator deems the preacher's proclamations of sin and hell as childish imaginations that only serve his own self-interests, castigating his devotees as imbeciles. However, this satirical attack is interspliced with proclamations to Satan, praising him as the Lord of Silence, who will get his vengeance against God, and twisting the words of Jesus to call forth the world's children into Satan's arms, deeming them little princes and princesses. Narratively, idolatry is a takedown of the world's remaining priests and holy leaders, condemning them in their arcane beliefs to a land of shit. And as for the rest of the disaffected masses, the endless depths of Satan's eyes provide refuge. This song, an extremely underrated track in my opinion, speaks to the lost, godless masses on seas of confusion and whirling around in metaphorical storms of feces.
That's 3 songs in a row now that mention poop. Tobias Forge? More like toilet farts. What are you, 9?
It offers wisdom and redemption in the form of Satan. All they have to do is look beyond the word of the Bible, cast away their preconceptions of sin, and abandon God for good. Narratively, Depths of Satan's Eyes is the final nail in the coffin. The world now belongs to the devil. All semblances of the old religions have been wiped away, and there is only Satan. And how do we commemorate this new era?
I thoroughly apologize for the previous joke. Sausage Party is a stupid movie made by stupid people, and I resolve to never mention its existence in my videos again.
Within the ruins of the past, the people congregate for a ritual, a mass orgy in celebration of Lucifer's son. Notably, a monstrance clock is a clock that holds the consecrated body of Christ in Catholic ceremonies, but in this case, it's representative of the devil's child on full display in a womb-like structure. The song itself invokes black candles and incense smoke and swaying revelers on its surface, but all that masks its true meaning, a sexual congregation in Satan's name. The chorus, proclaiming their intent to come together, is a pun about achieving that so-called happy ending. Lady revealed of cloak is just a fancy way of saying a woman without clothes.
Giggity.
And on a hot summer evening when your brain is mush and your speech is slurred, you might accidentally get the song's title wrong, or correct.
To the sound of the monstrous cock. Wait.
This ritual, this conquest generations in the making, ends with one final call for all to come together, forever as one, united under the new God. And with that, the world only has one question. What now? From the ashes of Satan's ministry, a dark metropolis arises. one built on the foundations of God's remains. The citizens must adapt or die, and adapt they do as they turn to a convoy of new gods, hedonism, cults of personality, the warm embrace of Satan. In simpler terms, they're pursuing something better. The Latin word for this is Meliora. Ghost's third studio album marked another departure of sound and style. Moody, heavily guitar-driven, oozing 70s hard rock aesthetics, with flares on theremin and synthesizers suggesting a more futuristic setting. Yet despite this more mainstream presentation, the liturgical darkness of the prior albums persists enough to remind listeners of that classic Ghost sound. And this tonal shift reflected in the new vocalist, Papa Emeritus III. At that point, he flaunted the most distinct personality of the frontmen, debonair and sensual, more explicitly humorous, yet sinister when he wanted to be, a modern-day Phantom of the Opera. In my view, he perfectly represented the middle ground between the dark, mysterious Papa's past and the flashy, comical Copia.
My hot take is that everyone, especially the newer fans, wanting Papa 3 to come back as a frontman are just suffering from severe anemoia. How's bro supposed to sing if his vocal cords are severed?
With all this in mind, Meliora can be considered the bridge between Ghost's gothic metal roots and their current glitzy arena rock image. While Infestissumam remains my favorite album, Meliora is, in my opinion, their best. Everything we've come to know and love about Ghost over the years can be found here. Yet, as the final entry in a narrative trilogy, Meliora's storytelling remains as strong as ever. The intro, a bombastic motif for mellotron choirs and theremin, invokes the dark futuristic dystopia that is Satan's world. And how exactly are the people going to regain a semblance of the pleasure they once knew? Getting shit-faced on absinthe.
Absinthe. Oh, son of a bitch!
For such a powerful, elaborate, and quite frankly underrated song, Spirit's lyrical content simply amounts to drinking so much wormwood liqueur that you hallucinate apocalyptic visions. There's more poetry in Spirit than story, with references to the 7 seals of Revelation, demonic creatures with cloven hooves, the 7 gates of hell, all bottled up in a vessel, touted by a green muse. However, straightforward as it is, it still fits the theme of exploiting physical indulgences to distract from the crushing coldness of reality. And the final verse, which references the Edgar Allan Poe piece Imitation, pleads for no one to intrude upon the partaker's self-inflicted illusions of hope. A kick-ass bass riff leads into From the Pinnacle to the Pit, another Satan prayer that, on its surface, recounts the story of Lucifer's expulsion from heaven, making an impact with the earth so powerful it actually disfigures the planet. Yet it praises Satan's newly achieved independence from heaven's chains, compelling him to own his banishment in the form of lavish attire and a commanding scepter over his subjects. The ministry views God as a tyrant, and Satan's banishment as a high honor. Now Satan lives among the people of Earth, spreading his ideals of freedom and self-pursuit. Metaphorically, the people of the Dark Metropolis,
which I shall henceforth refer to as Satania,
are likewise encouraged to embrace their own independence, as they too have fallen from grace and must pick themselves up to make the most of their new reality. I'm lumping these two together as they were originally a fully instrumental pair before the former was split into a transitional song, and the latter was given a lyrical rework in pre-production. Devil Church, a rock-infused piece on organ and mellotron, leads into cerise, an Old English word for, fittingly, church. Enough has been said about this song, which might just be Ghost's dark romantic masterpiece. From the new Church of Satan comes a stomping, sludgy piece with orchestral accents and lyrics about acceptance, with conditions. It's at once a satire on how fundamentalist cults lure sheep into their clutches, and an honest expression of the sort of toxic love the satanic church has to offer. For millennia, the people have been told that they're inherently sinful, their repressed selves rolling inside them like thunder, unable to break free. But the new church offers another path, the shameless freeing of the self, in exchange for complete devotion to the devil. Its associated music video also tells a Carrie-inspired story of a young girl breaking her chains and finding her true potential by rejecting institutional conformity and unlocking telepathic powers. It's a departure from the suppression imposed by religion's past, but is this sort of unbound reveille any different at the end of the day? After all, just like all those preachers and grifters from before, Satan also wishes to lure you in, and keep you there. Spoxonot is noteworthy for two reasons. One, it was reworked into the notorious ending riff for prequels Rats, and two, it literally translates from Swedish into Ghost Sonata.
That's really all there is to say.
Anyway, He Is was originally written for Infestissumam, but it didn't match that album's vibes.
I know, shocking, right?
So it was reworked and inserted into Meliora, a satire on stereotypical church songs, its folksy guitars and soothing vocals befitting of any house of God on a Sunday morning. Even the lyrics, if you're zoning out, could pass for a God-worshipping hymn. Narratively, He Is functions the same as From the Pinnacle to the Pit, and all the other Satan prayers before it. It plays like the Satania national anthem, an upbeat gospel-inspired sing-along that praises, with smiles and sunshine, the all-encompassing warmth of the devil. There's almost an arrogance to this song and how it's completely usurps the sound of God-centric church music and insists itself as the new norm, but that to me just makes it all the more hilarious, and all the more thematically relevant in Satan's world. Mummy Dust speeds things up a little with guitar thrashing and bold and brash synthesizer chords, blaring with unrefined abandon. Explicitly, the song is about mammon, a biblical term for money and material goods, often personified as a hulking demon surrounded with currency. Mammon presents itself as a corrupting force, drowning its adherents in greed, making them stupid and possessive, reducing them to creatures of appetite and dependency. The phrase mummy dust is itself a variant of snake oil, a general term referring to fraudulent remedies that promise much and deliver nothing. More broadly speaking, this song is a critique on the role of money in bureaucracy and politics, how its influence can rob people of their virtue and compel them to worship money over God. After all, In God We Trust is printed on every dollar bill in America. It would appear in Satania, with God out of the picture, the people would resort to deifying money and the sense of power and reverence it can buy. But really, how is this much different than now, in a supposedly God-fearing society?
Dude, I am so disillusioned right now.
Oh hell yeah, I love Majesty, the most underrated song on Meliora, with its old-school riffs and clever interplay between organ and guitars. While it functions as yet another Satan prayer, its description of despairing humans, likened to soulless sheep, prostrating before Satan is reminiscent of revelers worshipping a leader who hates them. Despite Satan feeling nothing but contempt and ridicule for the masses, they profess that all beauty lies in him, inadvertently pining for the validation they're bestowing. Says a nameless ghoul, a swarm of people idolizes an authority that is clearly looking down upon them, how to love something that hates you back. Majesty strikes me as Satania's final capitulation. They have finally drunk the Kool-Aid and are full-blown devil worshippers. And just in time, too. The story is drawing to a close, and things only look bleak ahead. Such a society cannot last forever. A foundation of materialism and pleasure simply will not stand. This is the message of absolution. It tells of a subject who, probably inspired by the possibilities of Satania, clawed and connived his way to the top, stepping over corpses to keep his eye on the prize. And despite his efforts, it's inevitable that even in this new satanic world, pursuing those desires can only lead him to one place: the fires of hell. And even if he doesn't find them on Earth, he'll certainly find them when he dies, just like everyone else, and is funneled straight to Satan's kingdom. This is a crushing realization, one that is mockingly conveyed to him with a command: fall to your knees, raise your hands to the sky, and cry for absolution. Absolution from the truth, his fate to be condemned to hell. The fires of absolution continue to rage. It consumes Satania and the people within it, and the world. And in his despair, the last survivor of Satan's dark metropolis commits a cardinal sin. He turns to God. But God has been dead for ages. Therefore, the survivor is mocked for his weakness and ignorance, and deemed bareback in disgrace, a sort of metaphorical sexual humiliation. All his pretensions, his preconceived notions, His imaginations run down his face in the form of tears. Tears shed for himself and for God. But none of that matters in the end, because hell awaits, where he will burn for eternity. And from the void, a choir of souls calls for God, only to realize that God is truly, undeniably, absent.
Well, that was bleak. As I said earlier, this is a story that can only be realized in retrospect. From what we've seen, in my opinion, these 3 albums tell an epic tragedy of Satan's ministry. The real-world atrocities that compelled the Antichrist's conception, his conquest of the world, and the propagation of his new society, all culminating in its own downfall. It is a story that speaks of passion, rage, rebellion, perversion, but regardless what you think of its righteousness, ultimately, it leads to the fire, as all things do. Anyway, if you made it to the end, thank you very much for watching. I guess it was inevitable that I'd cover all of Ghost's albums, but my focus on narrative is what compelled me to lump the first 3 into one overarching story. My thanks go to all the artists and concert goers whose content I incorporated into this video. I really couldn't have done it without you guys. I tried my best to credit everyone, but if I missed someone, let me know. And if you enjoy my ghost content, stick around. This channel covers horror tropes, media, literature, storytelling, all sorts of cool stuff. And I also plan on doing more album analyses in the future. I've had some luck dodging copyright claims in the past, so let's hope it sticks. And if you really want to support me, you can check out my novel, Hell's Gulf, an absurdist horror comedy that I can only describe as Gravity Falls, but R-rated and set in Florida, which is, a scary enough place as it is. Links in the description. Take care, and I'll see you all next time.